Okay, so just real quickly before we get into the prepared content, just a couple of housekeeping items and announcements. So I mentioned this just a few minutes ago. We're going to start today's session with about 30 to 40 minutes of prepared content. It's presented by myself in conjunction with my company, Unity and Company. I'll tell you a little bit about what Unity is in just a few seconds here. The purpose of the meeting today is to discuss strategies and applications. We're not going to be discussing specific vendors. This isn't a sales pitch or, a affiliate program. If people have worked with AI vendors in the past where you've had like really good luck or you're really impressed with the results, once we get to the forum part of this presentation, please do share your experiences with those vendors, but this is not intended to be a sales discussion of any kind, and we're not sponsored by any specific vendors. What I'd recommend is I'm going to go through the prepared content and try to kind of get through it. So log any questions that you might have or comments in chat. I've got a couple of people from my team in the room. They'll be monitoring the chat and answering questions if there are quick hit answers that they know off the top of their head, so they can provide that while I'm speaking. If not, we'll just hold the questions for the Q&A at the end. Once we get to the Q&A section, participants may answer those questions. In fact, I would encourage you guys to answer those questions because that's part of the value of this forum, is to bring you all together. We all come from different industries, different roles, different contexts. And so it's going to be great to hear people's perspectives and experiences beyond just myself and my team. Use the opportunity to network with each other. So if there are people who are asking questions that are really insightful or really aligned with where your business happens to be, there's nothing taboo about sending them a DM in Zoom's chat, trying to pick up some contact information and making a lasting connection here. That's part of the value that we want to bring to you guys, is creating those connections with people who you might not otherwise get the chance to interact with. And then finally, if you find this presentation useful and you want to bring it to your company or to your team, we offer complimentary encore presentations. So I'm happy to schedule 30, 40 minutes to talk to people within your organizations and deliver this content if you feel like it would be useful or germane to conversations that you guys already have internally. All right. Before I get rolling, any questions? Okay. Let's get started. So I'm only going to spend a couple of minutes giving you guys an overview of Unity and Company and what it is that we do. So my name is Scott Arrieta. I'm the CEO and founder of Unity and Company. Our company is a consulting firm that focuses on leveraging a strategic understanding of human experiences to unlock best-in-class business performance. And we do that across three main areas of discipline: customer experience, employee engagement, and talent development. So obviously this executive forum is built around our competency around customer experience consulting specifically. We work with our clients in a number of different ways. The most germane one to customer experience is just free-form consulting. We do a lot of bespoke consulting engagements. A lot of you guys as CX leaders know that the projects and initiatives that we work on are really contextual based off of whatever our organizational objectives are for that year. And so we don't really have a lot of predefined packages for CX work. We like to work strategically with executive sponsors to co-create a proposal that is bespoke for whatever objectives you are looking at. Our specific areas of competency are outsourcing operations. So if you're looking to expand globally and scale with the BPO network, we also offer agent training, as well as customer experience design for those companies that are really looking to transform their customer support operations into a more insights-driven customer experience operation. But we also do all the other bullets that you see here. All right, so that's it. That's the only pitch I'll give you for the rest of the day about Unity and Company. So let's dive into the content. So here's our agenda for today. We're going to talk about what AI is. And why is it that we're hearing about AI everywhere right now? It seems to be dominating the field and the topic of conversation. I'm going to share with you a curated list of some of the most promising AI applications for CX that I've found, but it's by no means a comprehensive list, and that's where y'all come in. to kind of share your perspectives and questions with that at the end of today's conversation. I'll give you a couple of examples of how leading companies are using AI, and then we'll do Q&A and open forum. All right, so let's talk about what is AI, just to get everything kicked off. So in simplest form, AI is machines simulating human intelligence, and it's probably easier to conceptualize this in terms of like, what can AI do? So there are these activities that it simulates are learning, reasoning, problem solving, decision making, and understanding natural language. And so again, not a comprehensive list, but the main buckets of types of AI. So because we've all been in customer experience organizations, we're all probably familiar with rule-based AI. Rule-based AI is probably the most rudimentary form of AI that has kind of been in play for decades now. The thing that really comes to mind as a emblematic example of this is a troubleshooting wizard. So what rule-based AI is it's limited intelligence. It requires predefined rules and logic in order to perform a task. And so based off of user inputs or inputs that are fed into the system, it will spit out what recommendations and resolutions kind of look like at the back end. So again, troubleshooting wizard is kind of the pioneer of how we've been using AI in operations and CX applications for years now. But where things have really started to advance is machine learning. So with machine learning, instead of feeding your AI specific rules and inputs, you're actually programming algorithms, which are much more broad-based and can simulate intelligence if you fed enough data into the system to basically train the AI and make it smarter. So this uses algorithms to learn patterns and relationships in data. More data equals better performance. And if there's anything that's characteristic of where we are as a society from a technological capability perspective today, it's the fact that data is more ubiquitous and more plentiful than it has ever been at any point in human history. Like, storage of data is getting cheaper, and there's a lot more data around to train these machine learning enabled AIs, which is what's making them a lot more useful for business applications. So examples here, and we all see this as consumers, e-commerce recommendation engines, right? These things are getting scary predictive. Like sometimes, like I'll hop onto Amazon and it will know what I want before I feel like I've even articulated or given it any information to know what I want. It's terrifying and frightening, but also really convenient. And so that's kind of the double-edged sword there of AI. Natural language processing, another huge area where AI is making huge strides in recent days. So what natural language processing is kind of what it sounds like. It understands and generates human language. You can do translations with this. Or sentiment analysis. And so you can see that this technology is really kind of progressing to be better over time. So examples here are chatbots and smart routing. So basically taking an inquiry that is presented by a customer and being able to extrapolate from that, how elevated is this customer? Is this ticket actually a complaint? How should it be categorized and routed so that we can handle it with the correct level of urgency, prioritization, and with the optimal service level versus, categorization systems of old were more first in, first out, and we were limited in how intelligently we could route contacts. Generative AI. So generative AI is where a lot of the conversation is really dominating the news these days. This is where AI can generate net new content that is not present in the data that it's been trained against. So if you think about search engines in the early days, search engines are not generating net new content. You type in keywords, it indexes those keywords based off of all the available results on the internet, and it serves you what it thinks are the most relevant articles based off of that. Generative AI takes that a step further, where instead of inserting keywords, you can actually give it a plain English prompt and ask the AI to develop something net new that didn't exist before. So for example, when I was putting together this presentation, I used ChatGPT to help me think about how to organize and structure the data. This general hierarchy of types of AI was generated from a simple prompt from ChatGPT. I just asked ChatGPT, hey, what are some types of AI? and it gave me about 500 words that got me started and helped me to understand where I should dig in further and what examples I can bring to the table. Also a product by OpenAI, which is the company that has developed ChatGPT, is DALL-E. And what DALL-E does is it's a generative AI engine, but for visual images. So you give it a prompt and it will generate a new visual image that never existed before. So for example, the cute little furry critter we have at the corner of this slide here is an image of a baby Chewbacca from Star Wars. And this is not an image that exists prior to this AI generating it based off of limited information in a prompt. And so like, this is really, really interesting. And they have generative AI in music, in text, in visuals. It's really, really interesting to see what AI is capable of, especially since there's so much digitized content out there for it to be trained off of and to feed off of. Two aspects of AI that we're not going to talk about today because it's not as directly corollary to customer experience, but it's important to kind of know and talk about because they're really kind of coming to the forefront of society these days, is robotics. So robotics is the blending of machines performing tasks that are programmed with artificial intelligence, and they can either be performed autonomously or semi-autonomously. They might need human guidance or intervention in order to complete their task to spec. So examples here would be assembly lines. Surgical robots are being deployed to basically do procedures to a level of accuracy and like fine motor movement that humans have a difficulty replicating. And so a really great example of robots, AI, and humans working side by side in order to achieve things that we previously couldn't. And then autonomous systems. So these systems operate completely independently. They're capable of making decisions based off of predefined parameters without human intervention. So examples here are the progress that we're making along the areas of self-driving and drones. But again, not the focus of our discussion for CX today. All right, so why is everybody talking about AI now? Like I mentioned when we went through all of the AI types, that some of these things have been in play for years, and some of these things have been developing at various levels of maturity for years. But it seems like there's been an explosion in like news coverage and business discussion specifically about AI and how or if we should leverage it. And really, there are four main reasons that I think are pushing these things to the forefront. The first is AI technology is advancing to the point where it's no longer this esoteric topic that only makes sense to the geeks in the room, right? It's really kind of reaching consumer accessibility, especially with the advent and distribution of ChatGPT. I think people are fascinated by it, a little terrified by it, but also the utility is undeniable, even for consumer applications, not necessarily business applications. The second is the increased availability of data. We talked about machine learning algorithms and how they really depend on getting fed and trained by the available data in order to enhance their effectiveness. And we're just living in an age where data is more prolific and available than it has ever been before. The third thing is, like, we as a society are starting to talk about what's the potential societal impact? Like, how does this impact our economics, the way we think about our jobs, our contributions to society, the way that the next generation thinks about what skills to acquire? Because one thing is for sure, with the advent of AI, there will be an impact to the jobs that are available on the market. And we want to make sure that we're responding to that intelligently. But I don't think it's all doom and gloom, and we'll talk about that in a future slide. And then the final piece is the growing adoption of AI by businesses. And I think this is kind of the sum of all of the above. As AI technologies are getting more mature, the utility is a lot easier to recognize and to harness. As machine learning algorithms become more powerful, businesses are now waking up to the idea that there's a competitive advantage to be had here. There's a study by Gartner that actually says that about 30% of routine transactions are handled by AI-enabled processes, current state in 2023. This was a study for this year. But in just 2 years, by 2025, their projection is that that will jump to 70%. of transactions will be handled by AI-enabled processes within 2 years. So that is like a startling time frame to make that much progress in terms of adoption. But it's Gartner, and Gartner has a decent track record for this stuff. And honestly, if you sit and think about it, it doesn't really feel that far out of reach for that to be true. But here's the other stat, is that only about 67%, or actually 67% of businesses have not yet even begun to broach the topic of how to integrate AI into their service flows. And so really the victory goes to those companies who figure out a way to integrate AI into their workflows now and create an early competitive advantage before everybody else jumps on the bandwagon. And that's going to happen pretty quickly. All right. So furthering my point here, that most companies aren't ready to leverage AI yet. So beyond the fact that most companies haven't even started the conversation internally, there's like some deeper things that companies really have to grasp or grapple with before they can even attempt to leverage AI successfully within their organizations. So the first is, most companies are still product centered versus being truly customer centered, right? And I think this is for a lot of reasons, but my hypothesis is it stems from an incomplete understanding of customer experiences, not because people think that customer experiences don't matter, but because traditionally customer experiences have been really tough to quantify. Like if you think about the most data-rich sources of customer experience interactions, they're through unstructured qualitative feedback that's presented by the customers themselves. You know, they're powered by the insights of the people on the front lines, right? And it's just really hard to aggregate, categorize, analyze with any degree of statistical certainty the feedback that you're getting out there from the marketplace. And so what do companies do? They really focus on the data that is easier to capture. It's lower hanging fruit, and that tends to be product-centered data. But what you get is a very one-dimensional view of the overall customer experience. And so in order to truly capture the benefit of AI, companies are going to have to become more customer-centered, not necessarily saying that customer support operations needs to lead the pack, but saying that customer centricity needs to be a cross-functional skill, and that needs to be enabled by infrastructure that is shared across multiple functions so that everybody is looking at the same story, everybody has access to the same data, and everybody is going to market with strategies that are complementary to each other. So rather than like product marketing and customer support having individual roadmaps that don't really tie, they're going to need to tie and be more harmonious in the future. And that really brings me to the second point, which is customer support versus customer experience. We're all CX professionals here in this room, and so we know the difference. So I'm probably preaching to the choir, but customer support is really this transactional operational function, tends to be relegated to the role of a cost center, where the name of the game is really kind of doing more with less, reducing costs, becoming more efficient over time. Customer experience organizations, on the other hand, really have a primary competency around insights and cross-functional strategy. And so it's more than just customer support operations. It's a lot of internal departments moving forward in lockstep, using the same data and the same strategies, but just kind of attacking it from different angles to really advance the customer experience as a whole. And that requires an organizational design decision, strategic planning dependencies, and data configuration in order for companies to truly become customer experience oriented. And then final piece is personnel implications. So I think these conversations are just beginning, but I think a lot of companies are going to start to have conversations within the next few months about what are the implications to personnel? Do we have the right people? How's our talent strategy impacted? How do we think about our internal bench building and our need for upskilling? And what is the strategy to basically make these changes gradually over time so as not to shock the system? And the answer here is going to be different for every organization, depending on how much AI is likely to disrupt their current kind of operational strategy. Okay. All right. So here's the good news. Despite the fact that AI is complicated, a little bit overwhelming, there are infinite applications, it seems like, for how to integrate it into your business. Really, it comes down to just two main areas of focus. So the leading brands are focusing on two key pillars for AI in their orgs. And it really just comes down to personalization and seamlessness and efficiency. So the great thing about personalization is studies have shown with these companies who are kind of pioneering AI-enabled personalization is that it increases customer retention because the offerings feel more personalized to you. You feel more understood. That makes you stickier as a customer. It increases conversion rate because, again, the offers are more customized to you and your situation. You see more of yourself in the offer. You're more likely to convert. And then it also correlates strongly to average ticket sales, where not only are you going to convert with more frequency, but you'll probably spend more too, because again, the offerings are more customized for who you are and what you need. Seamlessness and efficiency is another huge area where AI is really enabling companies to do interesting things that we could never really do in the past. So this involves streamlined problem resolution, providing quick hit answers, especially after hours where it's impractical or not feasible to staff a human. You can get human-like responses in detail for no incremental cost, and frictionless transactions. So just making doing business with your company feel more seamless because of the fact that your process flows are optimized for as few customer inputs as possible. So the splash here for the logos, Kroger, Starbucks, Nike, JP Morgan, the thing that binds them all together, they're companies from a broad range of industries, but all of them have come on record saying that personalization and seamlessness are two of their defining pillars for the 2023 calendar year. All right. So with all of the things that AI can do, it's really tempting to start with a tech-first perspective, kind of look into vendors, look into capabilities, and kind of work backwards as to how you would implement it from there. Our recommendation is to focus on the customer journey first, not necessarily the tech. It's important to understand generally what the tech is able to do, but the customer journey needs to be paramount and the thing that is central to the conversation. And so the customer journey, highly simplified, has these four main stages to it. There's a recommendation phase. So this is pre-purchase where the customer is shopping. They might be nascently aware of the fact that they need a solution in a particular field, and you can really grease the wheels and increase conversion if you can be proactive about recommending to the customer what to do next. The next piece is recognizing when there is a need, and the thing that AI allows us to be able to do is not to be reactive to recognize that need. We don't have to wait for the customer to tell us what it is that they want. We can actually start to preempt and predict what the customer wants and use those insights not just from a customer support and customer interaction perspective, but also to make kind of predictive and proactive decisions elsewhere in the organization. We'll talk a little bit about Stitch Fix and how they do that, not just from a customer-facing perspective, but also as it pertains to inventory management, which is a really interesting application. The next is to route intelligently. I mentioned this a little bit earlier in the presentation, a couple of slides down, but we really now have the opportunity to route more intelligently than ever before, right? And so instead of really adhering to a very simple first in, first out service interaction model, we can assign different prioritizations, accomplish skill-based routing in ways that are more refined than we could do in the past, and really just have a better sense of the context that we're dealing with without relying on human-based routing to accomplish those things. And then the final piece is how we respond. This is probably where we'll have the most engagement, because as customer experience organizations, like, we are responsible for the response and the ultimate interactions that we have with our customers. And there's a lot of controversy right now, or differences of opinions on how AI forward customer responses should be. Should we just go all in and like AI is the new customer response platform? You know, should we have AI just kind of support human beings on the front end, or is there a blend of both that actually makes the most sense and advances the conversation? All right, so We can use NLP, which is natural language processing and machine learning, to make personalized recommendations and offers. We can recognize customer needs and emerging trends before they become obvious, intelligently route. We talked about that, and respond to the customer using a method that is optimal for their use case. Okay. So let's start with recommendations. So as consumers, we're all pretty familiar with recommendation engines. So personalized recommendations, they drive increased conversions and dollars. We talked about that before. A couple of examples just to plant seeds of creativity here with the audience is Starbucks. So a lot of us probably have gone to Starbucks at some point in our life. Starbucks had made a lot of strategic decisions, first with the Starbucks card, then with the mobile app, and now using that data infrastructure to drive consistent conversions and engagement from their user base. So what Starbucks does is they use geolocation, because they're now on your phone and have access to your GPS coordinates, and lapsed user criteria. So if you haven't bought a coffee in a couple of weeks, they'll use that plus your geolocation to push you personalized app-based recommendations for products that they know you're likely to want to have, for locations which are proximate to where you are. And this whole strategy is built around trying to reactivate customers and keep them sticky and keep them in the funnel, which is why Starbucks continues to dominate and grow, even with the proliferation of a lot of other competitors who don't have this competitive advantage at their disposal quite yet. Brinks Home Security. This might be a brand that you guys are familiar with. They only really have about 2% market share, but they actually have their roots in more commercial security applications. But they did venture into the DTC space recently, and again, struggled with market share capture, despite the fact that they have a primary competency in security that should translate well to the residential market. And so what they decided to do with AI is really kind of figure out why their offers weren't resonating with their intended market. And what they found was they were only doing about 2 to 3 concurrent A/B tests with their offers and packages locally before AI came along and allowed them to dramatically increase the number of concurrent tests that they can run. So they went from 2 to 3 to 50,000 different iterations concurrently. And based off of that, they almost doubled their average D2C ticket sales. About 98% is what the calculation ended up being. And these case studies are provided by the Harvard Business Review, which is a great article. And they just did a webinar if you're really interested in kind of looking more into the intelligence engine that they built to help them accomplish that. Really interesting stuff. All right, we'll talk about Stitch Fix. So Stitch Fix is a company that I actually used to work for. I worked for them pre-IPO, stayed with them during their public offering and a little bit after that, into global expansion and multiple product lines. One of the things that not a lot of people really appreciate about Stitch Fix is just how much data science and algorithms is integrated into their overall offerings. They are not just a box service that sends you stuff through an e-commerce package. If that was all that Stitch Fix was, there really wouldn't be a lot to write home about. Amazon does that well, frankly, does it better. But what Stitch Fix did was they adhered to a principle called art and science, right? And so they doubled down and had hundreds of data scientists and algorithm engineers on staff, as well as complementing their service model with live stylists who would actually make styling decisions for you based off of algorithmic filters that were built by the data scientists on the back end. And so how did Stitch Fix do this? So they created an app called Style Shuffle. Style Shuffle is a gamified experience that's integrated into their overall mobile app experience, which basically serves up different styles of emerging styles that are popular in the market, and gets you to, in almost Tinder fashion, like swipe right and swipe left to say whether you enjoy that style or not. And what we found shortly after its launching is that people were addicted to it as just a game experience, right? But at the same time, we were getting a lot of free inputs to really feed and train that algorithm. So Stitch Fix has this competency in really understanding what is at the bleeding edge of emerging trends. And within the retail industry, that's rare. Like within retail, a lot of buyers have to make predictions about what style preferences are going to be next season. And that's why retail is addicted to this model of discounting things at a deep discount after the season is over, because sometimes they take big swings, sometimes they make big misses. Stitch Fix, because of its algorithms and data, is much less exposed to that dynamic because they have a crystal ball on what people want right now, and they can use that data to acquire inventory and sell it through their system in smaller batches than their big box retail competitors would have to do. They also analyze keeps and fix feedback data. So keeps being, if we send you a box of 5 items, which of those 5 items do you keep? And then what are the attributes associated with those items? So if there's this particular silhouette, a particular print, a particular style that is more successful at being kept than others, proud to have worked there, really interesting use cases that Stitch Fix has employed. All right. So the next piece is routing, intelligent call routing. And I want to say thank you to Bill Perez, who's with us today. He actually sent this to me because he found it interesting. And I'm like, this is a perfect example to really bring home the benefits of intelligent call routing. So NICE, which is a customer experience platform that does a number of different things. They use natural language processing to identify and route customer complaints. So they have a specific offering within their suite called Enlighten AI. What Enlighten AI does is it uses NLP to identify, classify, and route customer complaints. And so this, depending on your industry, like Bill and I actually both come from a financial services background, and within financial services, there are a lot of compliance requirements about identifying complaints, documenting complaints, retaining them, and handling them in certain ways. And the liability associated with doing that incorrectly can be massive. And so but you're reliant on human classification prior to the advent of AI, which, as we all know, humans are prone to error, especially when performing transactions at scale. And so the fact that NICE uses NLP to facilitate this for certain industries can be a game changer. But for even just service-based industries, this allows you to identify complaints based off of language and sentiment analysis, route them to your most skilled customer service agents, and retain and recover customer relationships with a greater degree of proficiency than ever before. And so even for non-regulated companies or lightly regulated companies, this technology can be a huge game changer. All right, so here's the big question as we get into the response piece of the customer journey. Is AI coming for all of our CX jobs? And the spoiler is like our take is probably not, actually. And the thing I think that keeps CX squarely still in the hands of humans for the foreseeable future is the fact that there is a difference between transactional and relational experiences. And I think a lot of people look at AI and they look at the cost savings and they see the margins, and it's really tempting to think about, well, why don't we just like take these hundreds or thousands of people that we have in customer support operations and have AI do most of what it is that they do. And for the most part, like that's going to be fairly possible. So, but you have to do it intelligently. So there's a difference between transactional and relational experiences. And this difference starts with what is the consumer actually expecting out of each of these experience types. In a transactional experience type, the thing that the customer values the most is speed and accuracy. Right? They don't want you asking about their dog or the weather or taking extra time to answer the question, how much money do I have in my bank account? For a balance inquiry, the quicker you can get it to them, as long as it is accurate, that is the pinnacle of customer satisfaction for that particular transaction. And the reason that I say that AI can effectively offset a lot of customer service headcount is because of the fact that transactional experiences can account for up to 90% or more of customer support volume in a typical company. We call these empty calorie contacts. Right now, we deploy humans against it because we don't really have a technological alternative that does it more efficiently. But in the future, AI is going to come for those positions, lower the cost basis of those positions, but it's not all doom and gloom because there is another piece which is relational experiences. And in relational experiences, it's not about speed and accuracy. It's actually about addressing the gap between expectation and what the customer experienced. And right now, it's actually counterproductive to deploy AI against those use cases, because in those situations, it's not just the answer itself that is the determining characteristic of whether or not you successfully recover that relationship. It's actually the intangibles. It's your tone of voice. It's your pacing. It's how well the customer feels understood. It's how well you empathize with their situation, how you customize your recovery offer to them to really fully meet the core needs of their use case. And those core needs could be explicitly stated, or could be inferred. And right now, AI isn't really great at doing those actions. Humans are much, much better. And then there's also the expectation where right now, a lot of customers who are interacting with AI, there is this tendency, some companies try to present their AI as if they were a human with no disclaimers. And what you see in those situations is that the customers who interact with those AIs can feel it at a visceral level and actually actively resent the service experience. However, if you deploy the AI in a similar way and provide caveats that this is an AI-enabled experience, but if you need a human is available for you as an escalation point, the customer satisfaction verbatims that come back from those interactions are actually a lot more favorable, because they understand that a human is available when it becomes more convenient for them, the end customer. So what we think is going to happen is not that AI is going to come for all of our jobs. I think it's going to shift the nature of customer support and customer experience jobs. It's going to elevate the craft of CX. So we will have fewer entry-level roles serving these empty calorie contacts, but we're going to replace those with more specialized roles, emphasizing the art of conversations and service recovery. We're going to need people to analyze the data provided by AI and synthesize those insights into continuous process improvements. And then, of course, we're going to need people to continuously refine the way our AI systems are implemented so that we can get even better results over time. So rather than the bulk of customer service headcount being more entry-level roles, I think what we'll see is a gradual progression towards a lot more strategic and higher level CX roles in the future. All right, final slide. So we think that humans working seamlessly alongside AI is the future. So as a summary, you can deploy chatbots because they do the best with transactions, and there are a lot of transactions out there for them to do. So anything in your business that requires speed, accuracy, or access during after hours, where there's typically low or no accessibility to humans, that is going to be a net competitive advantage for your business. And then you retain your humans and invest in up-leveling them and training them so that they can build and recover relationships. And then there are a number of applications where AI can actually partner with your human representatives to create superhuman customer experiences. So one of the things, having been in customer support in the past, is especially when you're dealing with some of the most elevated types of cases with a lot of previous contacts, they tend to further spiral into even more dissatisfaction the longer they go. Why is that? It's because their case history is pages and pages long, and most agents don't have the time or patience to familiarize themselves with everything that has happened over the course of a case. What AI will be able to do is use their generative capabilities to view case history notes for you and provide you a summary of all the major things that have happened in that case. And so what this does is it really helps humans to provide better solutions to long and protracted cases, which is it's a huge problem today in the world of service recovery. Proactive knowledge-based suggestion. So a lot of us have invested in creating really robust knowledge bases. We might have entire knowledge management teams deployed against the maintenance of that knowledge base. And yet things fall flat because agents frankly, don't want to actually go and search the knowledge base, or if they search the knowledge base, it's based off of like a rules-based keyword programming, and they might get a lot of irrelevant results, which is really inconvenient if you're on the phone and accountable to providing answers to a customer right now. So what AI will do is be able to contextually understand what it is that you're working on based off of natural language processing, and serve up proactive knowledge-based recommendations based off of everything that it knows is going on. And you're already seeing companies like Zendesk, for example, integrating this into their overall product. Generated responses, which is if you have a response to a customer to write, you're not exactly sure how to get it started. Chat GPT and GPT enabled chat bots are already able to produce some pretty impressive quality responses to get you started that can later be customized by the agent after the fact. We already talked about search capabilities, and then creating and suggesting new help articles. So those of you who have managed knowledge management in the past know that this piece of curating, creating new articles, updating old articles can be really arduous and labor intensive. And a lot of times it's incomplete, especially as your knowledge base continues to grow. Like a lot of companies forget to deprecate old stuff and forget to elevate new stuff. AI can be deployed against those tasks so that your knowledge base is tight, hyper relevant, and that those results are being served up to people on a timely basis. All right, so that concludes the prepared content. I'd love to open it up now to Q&A. I see quite a number of responses in the chat here. And so let's go ahead and get started with that. Monica, have you been watching the questions? Are there any that we should start with?
Yeah, so most of the comments have just been folks providing their role and where they're located and what company they're coming from, just as a means of everybody kind of getting to know each other a little bit better.
That's great.
So,
thank you guys for doing that. What a great group.
Yeah,
love it.
And then we do have one question in the chat from Brian. Brian asked, what guidelines would you use for determining whether a business is mature enough to consider AI a viable option for CX?
That's a good question, Brian. I have thoughts. Does anybody want to jump in though? Or should I be the icebreaker? Okay, here are my thoughts, and feel free to push back if you feel differently. I think it really kind of depends on how hardcore you want to go along the AI path. I think there are things that like customer support organizations can really do in a vacuum that will provide step function benefit depending on where you start from. So for example, there have been many customer support organizations that I've worked with in the past that might not have the political capital to influence cross-functional decision-making, but they have the autonomy to procure their own chatbot and deploy that chatbot. And like they deploy that chatbot for customer-facing applications, for transactional inquiries that occur inside and outside of business hours. They deploy that chatbot internally for agent use so that it can scour the knowledge base for you and provide generative responses. So I think a customer support organization with no further buy-in and relatively immature organizational structure can pull that off on their own. But if you really want to start getting to some of the predictive recommendation algorithms and things like that, you're going to need to have a conversation strategically at the executive level of your company about, are we customer support oriented or are we going to be customer experience oriented? And if we're customer experience oriented, how are we going to support that? Not just with organizational and governance structures, right? I mean, like, because the customer experience requires cross-functional departments who traditionally don't work closely together to work very closely together, but then it requires governance models as well. You might need to create new roles. And this is why the chief customer officer role now exists. Like the defining characteristic of the CCO is the fact that they are multidisciplinary in scope of control. Right. And so they have the ability to influence marketing, product engineering, and customer support roadmaps. And that's ultimately the infrastructure you need if you want to make maximum investment in AI. But there are like small things you can do. just kind of right off the bat in isolation. I'm interested though, from the CX leaders in attendance, like, what do you guys think? Like, how does that play out in your organizations?
I'll add some comments here. I think in my experience, I've been in the product space for a very long time. But even before you get down to figure out what the guidelines are, what I've found is that people lose sight of what they're trying to accomplish. Is that the CX scores that you're trying to improve? Is it the throughput of onboarding customers? That is what you're trying to drive. Is it predictive capabilities that you want to build, like you said, in Stitch Fix and so on, right? So I think once you really understand what you want to solve for, that can then dictate your path towards what flavor of AI you want to implement. And that in turn will tell you what guidelines you have to, or rather guardrails rather, that you need to be thinking about, whether it's personnel, whether it's training, whether it's investment of dollars and so on. So I think a lot of companies, especially now, are just jumping in because everybody else is saying AI. Everybody's just jumping up in AI.
Yes.
But it remains to be seen how much of that is going to be successful. And this is my hypothesis. If you know what you're trying to dive towards, what I call the ROAI, return on AI versus ROI, then you would know what kind of guidelines you need to be playing by. So those are the kinds of things and conversations I'm having with the companies I've been at, the places where I consult, is to really step back and then move forward. But it's a valid question. Some companies may not be that mature to digest what it takes to implement AI. So just some quick thoughts there.
I love that. Samit. I mean, like, that is exactly right. And I think that's exactly what a lot of CX leaders are faced with these days is AI is dominating the conversation from a news and media perspective. I think a lot of CEOs are well-meaning and they're looking for a strategic advantage. And so they delegate that downward and they say like, hey, Sumit, like, let's implement AI. And like Sumit's probably sitting there saying like, let's have a more strategic conversation about what is it exactly that you want to accomplish. AI might be the right modality. It might be the right tool. But let's not start with the hypothesis that we just need to, elevate everything and that's going to solve all our problems. We actually have to have a strategic objective that AI is well suited in order to.
And those objectives will vary on the size of the company. If you're a small startup, I know there's some folks here from fintech. I think Monica's in fintech. You'll realize that the most important thing for you right now is not just to sell the product, but is to onboard customers through KYC, KYB, all of those. Those are very, very manual processes. Sure. If you can use AI in that regard, which is more of a back office oriented work, you're better off doing a focused work there versus saying, oh, let me build a customer layer in an app, right? What are you going to do with that when you can't get customers through and join your platform? So depending on the size and shape and the stage of growth of the company itself, your decision might change about what you want to do with AI.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Really good insights. All right.
Yeah, I think a lot of it.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, like, I think a lot of it also kind of boils down to like how well does the company know what their customers are trying to contact them about from a support perspective, and then how able is that company to then route and triage those requests. Because if you're looking at using AI as like purely from a transactional standpoint, you're right, like it's infuriating when you have more than a transactional request and you're getting transactional service, mm-hmm. if you're not able to recognize that and route that. I really love the slide that you had, Scott, on the recommend, recognize, route, and respond. I think a lot of the maturity on the routing front is needed, especially if you're considering using AI for the transactional stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I mean, one of the great things about AI is, to your point, Charlie, about knowing the types of transactions that you have and being able to deploy strategically against that. You could at least even use AI to help with that, to help you with intelligent classification of your contacts, because I think where a lot of companies, especially, Charlie, with WorkRise, familiar with you guys and how you have grown, and, you've just implemented Zendesk here within the last couple of years. And so there's a lot of like learnings and that have happened as you've kind of learned by doing there. But what AI can help you to do is when you're classifying or developing your data hierarchy within Zendesk and trying to figure out what your kind of routing and your SLA requirements are going to be, is it can actually recommend data classifications for you and, kind of tell you like, here's the distribution of context that you are getting. And you can make intelligent decisions about, is this something that we want AI to handle because it's sufficiently transactional? Or is this something that we want to be routed to somebody that's higher skill with more of a human touch, because we think it's more of a relational contact. So there's still ways of using AI in the background, even if you're not ready to commit to making it a customer facing tool.
Yeah, I think that's interesting. Like I think some of the first thoughts you have around using AI and CX is like from more of a contact center perspective, but
Yeah.
it's such an easy to engage with, zero cost to use upfront tool for just using AI as a thought partner for developing ideas and then executing on them. Like ChatGPT has been unbelievable at helping me write SQL queries to better understand our customers. And that's like, I feel like I've been able to accomplish stuff with ChatGPT on that front, in days what would have taken me weeks. Organizing meetings and sitting down with the right people at a company. So definitely not a lot of maturity needed for that use.
That's so funny. I was just talking to the director of support operations for Gorgeous, which is a Zendesk competitor. It's based overseas. And what she was saying is like, yeah, everyone's now a SQL expert because of ChatGPT. It's like, before that used to be a rarefied skill among customer support, leaders. And now it's like everybody's got access to the data at their fingertips. It's great. All right. Any other questions or maybe just insights as to how y'all are using AI technologies within your organizations? Again, not to share anything proprietary, but if there's just general feedback. Also love Sumit's approach of just talking about how he reframes the conversation with executives internally. I think that's something that CX leaders, we're kind of built with service in our DNA. And so it's very easy for us to say yes and just respond to requests as they come at us. But I think Sumit's advice of like, no, like, let's use this as an opportunity to reframe the conversation and align on strategy is like a really important leadership model that we should all consider. So anything in those areas that anybody wants to contribute to the conversation?
Well, I can certainly share at a high level. So even in an industry where you might think there wouldn't be as many relevant uses. So in our case, a state pension fund is a captive audience. So I've worked for two entities now where I've been a part of serving a captive audience, and yet we have certain underlying goals that are key to what we feel success would be in our engagement with our customers. And primary to that is leveraging AI as a support mechanism for the staff that interacts with our customers in a number of ways. One of which is, there's a misconception sometimes that you join an entity that offers, be it state or government, and you have a pension and you're set for life. But it's all based on formulas which translate to years of creditable service and how much you will receive as part of your final comp ongoing. And so for most of our educators in the state of California, they're not around for 40 years. And so they receive a fraction, which we, through our actuarial analysis, know exactly how much on average we're paying out. And it's about 60% in most cases of the salary while these individuals are active. So one of our goals is to, at the earliest possible moment, start conveying the importance of having ancillary savings vehicles because teachers in the state of California do not contribute to Social Security. So our goal is, in effect, guidance by way of, if you may call, a soft sell to encourage whether it's participation in our 403B and 457 plans or a number of 50 other competing plans, to have something in addition and to start as soon as possible in contributing toward those. That's one example where we could use AI relative to, let's say, Einstein, which is Salesforce AI embedded in that vehicle. Or the article that a couple of articles that I sent you relative to NICE, which is leveraging AI potentially in response to correspondence. So we don't just respond to our primary customers, we respond to the school districts that hire, the 1,800 school districts that hire all these teachers across the state. And they have questions relative to how to code creditable comp, and using a knowledge base that focuses on creating a potential response, which is then edited and enhanced, is going to help the individuals that provide that guidance.
Yeah.
Same with an enhanced knowledge base. You mentioned, I can't tell you how many times I've run across individuals in support capacity that don't use a knowledge base because it gives them too many responses, oftentimes that are not relevant.
Yeah.
So they just don't use it, which is not the goal. So leveraging AI to provide more targeted responses when they need it, at a moment's notice, is yet another application that you can leverage. And companies are developing a suite of products that extend beyond the contact center realm to help supporting customers.
Yeah, all really promising applications. And I can see how it would be totally helpful, like for your business. Like we had talked a long time ago about like, how do you start that education process early? And algorithmic identification will like enable you to be a lot more proactive. Bye, Heather. All right. Well, that wraps up our forum for today, you guys. Thank you so much for making the time to attend. If you have any feedback, please shoot it over to me, Scott at Unity & Company. And if there's any way that Unity & Company can be helpful to y'all as you're considering AI or any other CX engagements, you can either email me directly at scott@unityandcompany.com or info@unityandcompany.com. We'll also get to our team. So thank you guys so much again, and we hope you have a great day, and we'll be looking forward to inviting you all to the next one.
Thank you, Scott. Thank you, everybody. Bye.
Thanks, Scott. Bye, y'all.
Thanks, everyone.